guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my review of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I'm going to give a brief summary and then full review and spoilers, and then at the end I'm going to be talking about my channel and some possible upcoming changes. So let's talk about The Haunting of Hill House. I think this is a good read for October. I'm glad I read it. It's definitely like spooky, gothic, haunted house vibes, but for me, not scary, which is the important thing because I am very wimpy about that kind of stuff. But I feel like this one relies so much on you filling in things for the story, and that will make it scarier. So if you have a very active imagination and you can imagine a lot of horrible scenarios and things that, you need to fill in the blanks on to make it scary, then it might be scary for you. It wasn't for me, but it definitely has that unsettling factor to it. I definitely had moments where I was like, oh no, that's a bit much. I don't like that. But overall, I like it. As far as Shirley Jackson's writing, she's not my favorite. I think her writing is fine. What I mean is that her stories don't always land. I feel like I often want more. There's some unanswered questions, and I think she just always leaves you with just, I just wish there was a little more explanation, a few more answers to questions. But overall, I'd say this is 3.5 stars. Perfect for October. It's not long. Definitely check it out if you are interested in that kind of story of a haunted house, possible paranormal activity, poltergeists, etc. This is my recommendation. All right, so let's talk about full spoilers. And I'm just going to go over the plot. So you have The Haunting of Hill House. You have Hill House, and Dr. Montague is one of our characters, and he invites a few other characters over to spend time with him at this possible haunted house. And all the people that he invites have had encounters with paranormal activity or have had, things where he thinks that they might have some in with the supernatural. So our main character is going to be Eleanor, and she has been taking care of her mom for 11 years. Her mom has recently died, and then she has a sister that she is not really fond of because she feels that she is pretty repressive and she doesn't have the best relationship with her. So Eleanor gets the letter, and she immediately wants to go to Hill House. The other people that are going to be there are Theodora, she's like kind of sold as like she might have some kind of ability to see things that, she can like tell what the card is that is being held up in a different room. Like she'd tell you what's on the card, and like as she did it, she got better and better at like telling accurately what was on the card, I guess. This is kind of like her into the supernatural. The other person is going to be Luke, and he's just someone who's going to inherit Hill House eventually from his aunt. So he's just somebody in the family who owns Hill House that he's eventually going to inherit it, and he's there to just kind of keep them on their best behavior, I guess, since they're in this house and they don't own it. So you have Dr. Montague, Eleanor, Theodora, and Luke are our mains that are going to be throughout the story. But POV character, main character is Eleanor. She is kind of a mess of a character emotionally. She seems very fragile. She's very weak in a lot of ways. She seems like she's just not had time to develop a full personality because she's been taking care of her mom for 11 years, and she seems very stunted for someone who's like 32 years old. She's very childlike in her imaginings of things, and as she's traveling even to Hill House, I'm starting to feel like there's something off with Eleanor. Something not quite right, because she's imagining all these scenarios about just the houses that she's passing, and she'll say, oh, maybe I'll pull off here and live in this house, and I'm gonna have this happen and this happen, and all these like grand things that will happen to her in her life if she had lived in this house. That's just some random house on the side of the road. But she's kind of a character that you already are sort of like, oh, you're a little different, so maybe don't fully trust Eleanor's perspective on how things are going. So she gets to the house. Theodora arrives next, and the caretakers there are Mr. and Mrs. Dudley. They're kind of briefly factor in, and then the professor and Luke show up, and they're there, and they're discussing, the backstory of the home. I will say this is something I think would have been better, more explored, is the backstory of the actual house, the owners, the children, what happened, because it's like the owner of Hill House had 2 daughters who kind of fought over the property when he died, and then ended up going to one of the daughter's caretakers, and she committed suicide there. But all of this is kind of just said, and it's not the creep factor of like, what's going on in the house and the darkness that Eleanor seems to sense as soon as she arrives and the evil that resides in this house is kind of not explored enough, because I didn't really feel at any point, and I guess this is a small spoiler, I didn't really feel at any point that there were ever ghosts or that there was ever anything happening in the house that wasn't either the house or one of the characters. I felt like it was definitely like the house is creepy, but there's no sinister beings or feelings or things that you get that there might actually be somebody else there. I feel like that was something they should have played up if they the author should have played up if she wanted you to wonder or like question, which I think she did. So things start to happen in the house. There's chalk writing on the wall where no one's in there, and it says, "Help Eleanor," immediately calling Eleanor out, and come home. And there's creepy things that are happening at night with people banging, someone outside, a force banging on the door, and cold air, and gusts of wind, and all these unexplained things. But all this seems to be happening with either Eleanor being involved or mentioned. She also, at one point, her name is written in blood in Theodora's room, and there's blood all over Theodora's clothing, and it smells horrible, and it's so awful, and how could this happen, and why is the house picking on her? Eleanor seems to be in this, mindset where the house is picking on me. The house doesn't, I don't know why my name keeps being brought up, and they're going to think I did this, and I would never. And, she's very much like a very dramatic person as far as, why is all this happening to her? She starts to be less sympathetic as a character as the book goes on, because she seems to really dislike the people around her. She doesn't like Theodora anymore. She at first had a lot of warm feelings towards her. Then she starts to see her as dirty. She doesn't want Theodora to touch her. She doesn't like her. She feels that Theodora's talking behind her back or making jokes at her expense, and Theodora needs attention. And so already, you're starting to see, Eleanor, something's wrong with you. And even the other characters who are interacting with her, the doctor and Luke, she has a lot of, the doctor kind of is just, kind of a kindly old man. Luke's kind of, described as, a rake. He's kind of like somebody who just lives off of this, money from his family. And every once in a while, he steals money from his aunt's purse, and he gambles. He's just kind of eh. But everyone, doesn't get a full character. Just Eleanor, her backstory. But even the stuff with her mom and the possible, abuse and things that she may have suffered just being a caretaker for 11 years, it's not fully explored, and I do wish that there would have been more of that. The book doesn't really explain, what really happened. It's just she had a hard life. And she seems very sad and lonely, and she doesn't really know. She's always questioning herself with the group of people. Am I saying the wrong things? Did I make a fool of myself? Oh, I'm so embarrassed. So she starts out sympathetic, but she gets more and more withdrawn into herself and her thoughts, and she starts to see the others as kind of hostile, and she doesn't like them as much. So as the book progresses and they have more, supernatural things happening, you start to feel okay, either Eleanor is a victim of all these things or she is the cause. This was my thought, because she is our main character. So she's involved in some way. She's either going to be the victim of all the horrible things happening in the house for some reason, it singles her out, or she is in some way causing it or working with the house to cause these horrible things. So Mrs. Montague, the doctor's wife, shows up with her, a guy who works at the school, I'm guessing that Dr. Montague's from, but his name's Arthur. They factor into, not much of the story, but they were annoying, and I really didn't like Mrs. Montague. And I was kind of hoping they were going to be the horror characters that we can kill off happily and just be oh, gosh, what a shame, but we don't really care because they had crap personalities. That sounds harsh, but I did not like her. And Arthur was kind of a non-person. He wasn't great either. They were just, brought in, I think, to further the story. But she comes in and she's immediately I know the spirits. I can talk to the spirits. I have the planchette, which I guess is the little thing that you use with a Ouija board and get to spell things out. And I will talk to them, and they're going to feel the love I have, and they're going to be able to pass on. And she's very much immediately taking over things and feeling she's talking down to her husband. She's not super nice to anyone in the group. She's just I know, and I'm going to take care of this. To be fair, she was probably the most, she was the smartest one in the group. She does do things that would have been smart for the others to do, but this is a terrible trope in horror, but a lot of dumb decisions have to be made in horror books and stories and movies to further the plot. So common sense has to be thrown out the window a lot. So she comes and the planchette spells out Eleanor and the house and help me, Eleanor, and Eleanor wants to go home and all these things. And so everyone's already like, okay. They all go to bed that night, and Mrs. Montague and Arthur are in a different part of the house. Everyone else is in the doctor's room, and they have this supernatural experience where someone's outside the door and there's banging and, things are happening and everyone's like, the room is tilting and all that. But of course, the next day, Mrs. Montague and Arthur hadn't slept fine. Nothing happened to them. So then it's kind of like, okay, this is something to do with Eleanor. She's also deteriorating mentally, like pretty obviously throughout the book. She's kind of bringing up things, saying things that she shouldn't, maybe laughing at weird things. And everyone kind of seems to like be looking at her like, do you need, and the doctor even says at some points, like, if you really are feeling that way, you should probably leave. Like, is something wrong? Like, of course something's wrong. Get rid of this chick. So that next night, Eleanor goes crazy, decides the house is all she needs. She wants to be one with the house. She's running around. They're chasing her. They're trying to save her. She attempts possible suicide. You don't know what she's doing, but she's climbing up on this area where she could fall easily and kill herself. So Luke rescues her. They realize, Eleanor, you're the problem. Mrs. Montague says, hey, I inspected that room that you claimed had blood writing on the walls, and there's blood all over Theodore's clothes. There's nothing there. And that kind of leans into this all being Eleanor's doing. She was manifesting things. She was making things happen. She was targeting Theodora because she doesn't like her. So all of Theodora's things got ruined. But in reality, she just made them all see that and nothing was really there. Or her in the house, however you want to view it. So they tell Eleanor, you have to leave. And she's adamant, I will not leave. The house needs me. The house wants me here. This is my home. And here's where like characters have to do the dumb for the plot to happen. Because they put her in her car by herself. No way. Get a straitjacket on that woman. Get her home. Get her away from things. This girl is a mess. She tried to kill herself, but the doctor insists she has to be the one to leave on her own. She has to drive out. And Eleanor, kind of the last little part of the book is in her mind, and she's never going to leave, and she drives her car into a tree, and then that's the end. And you presume that she has died. So, not a lot of answers. I think the last, a little bit after that is just the aunt kind of being glad that, it's like the wrap up of, okay, everybody went home after that, and the aunt who owns the house is, glad that no one's there anymore, because who knows what would happen. I don't hate it. I think it has the elements of what is a really good, classic, scary horror novel. Has a lot of things in there that I'm like, yeah, that works. That's creepy. That's effective. But I feel like there's so many unanswered questions, and I don't like that you have to throw out all logic. And everyone has to kind of ignore Eleanor slowly cracking up to be like, oh yeah, she should just hang, or she should just drive off by herself. And even though I felt for sure, because there's a bit of foreshadowing that Eleanor was going to die, it didn't feel, I was like, I don't know that you earned this book. I'm kind of frustrated. But overall, I would say it's great for fall. It's great for spooky season. It's definitely got a great vibe. And I definitely think it could be really scary. Read it at night and see what happens. I didn't feel super scared, but it's one that will stick with me and oh yeah, that had moments. It definitely had a creep factor. So yeah, that's how I feel about The Haunting of Hill House. And let's talk about Lilith. So I want to get you guys' opinions on whether or not I should DNF this book. Lilith is by George MacDonald. I am 5 or 6 chapters into this book, and I feel like it's going nowhere fast. I'm not feeling a connection to it. It's about a guy who goes back to live at his estate, and he's younger, but he's taken over the estate, and it's he's hanging out in the library, he thinks he sees things, he goes and follows a raven and goes up to this garret where there's a mirror, and he walks through the mirror, and then the raven / man, because sometimes it's a raven, sometimes it's a man, is talking to him about himself and whether he's his true self. Does he know himself? Can anyone ever truly know if they're there? Is he really a person? It's very Alice Through the Looking Glass, and not in a good way, and I'm just not in this mood. So I even thought about picking up some kind of Stephen King book, like Cujo or something, that wouldn't be super scary, but kind of like for my wrap up for Halloween. I don't know that I can handle anything scarier like The Shining or Salem's Lot or anything because I'm super weak on that. But if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments, or if you really want me to finish up Lilith and give my review, let me know and I will suffer through. And finally, my channel. When I started this channel a few years back, I thought my name, Gwendolyn Ransom, which is not my real name, would be obvious that this is a booktube channel because Gwendolyn is from The Importance of Being Earnest and Ransom is from the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. It's that way, back over there, on my shelf. But it's two of my favorite literary names, Gwendolyn Ransom. Like I said, Importance of Being Earnest, Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I thought surely people will just know this is a channel that discusses books, and every once in a while a book adaptation. I don't feel like that's the case. I think probably people see my channel name and assume it is my name, and then don't know what I'm actually talking about on here. So I'm at this point of like, do I change it? Because everything is associated with Gwendolyn Ransom. I have a Goodreads, I have a Bookstagram, I have an email all associated with this name. But like I said, it is not my name. So I'm really sorry if you assumed it was. My real name is on my Bookstagram, my Instagram that's all about books. But yeah, I just don't obviously give my full name out, but I think possibly now is the time to make a name change channel. I think now might be a good time to change the name of my channel to reflect that I do book reviews and occasional media reviews. If you have any great ideas for whether or not I should change the name or what I should change it to, let me know. You can always email me. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this. I want to continue doing these reviews, but I feel like no one probably associates this channel necessarily with books or with book reviews. It's silly now that I think about it, but here we are. So please let me know your thoughts on my DNF of Lilith or what I should read next. Also my channel name. I really appreciate it. All your comments mean a lot to me. Please like and subscribe if you can, and I will talk to you in the next video.